Well, welcome everyone. My name is Ashley Quamme. I am joined by my partner and dear friend, Megan Lurtz. And today we are going to be talking about what is a fractional chief behavioral officer. Um, I started Beyond the Plan. Quick, just kind of story before we jump in. I started Beyond the Plan 2 years ago. Started to get into this work, and it was at that time that I had this what felt like a very crazy thought of what would it look like if a therapist worked inside of or alongside of advisory firms. For those of you who may not know a little bit about my backstory, my husband is a CFP. And he will be watching this, I'm sure, later, but he kind of thought I was a little crazy as a CFP, with inside of his own firm. And he's like, not so sure about that, babe. And so I was pretty determined from that point to say I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to make it work and I'm going to figure it out whatever that means. And so I continued just to kind of follow the breadcrumb thought trail of what could that look like? What would it mean? What would the responsibilities be? What would I be doing? And so for the last 2 years, I've had the privilege of working with 6 firms between the US and Canada. And it has been incredible, just the work that I've done alongside of advisors, alongside of their clients, but also within the firm. Fast forward to earlier this year, Meg and I started to dream and kind of think around, hey, like, what could we do together? What would that look like? How could we continue to support this mission of bringing financial therapy, financial psychology to firms, to advisors in a bigger way, in a better way that individually she and I, we may get there. We could have gotten there probably by ourselves, but 2 heads are better than one. And so Meg and I recently started collaborating and working with firms, working with clients together in this role, in this capacity as a fractional chief behavioral officer. And so today, what we would like to do is to share with you high level, just the work that we're doing, give you kind of a behind the scenes look of, what are all the things that we could do partnering together. I'll share just a little bit about my background and then I'm going to turn it over and let Meg share a little bit about herself. So, my home discipline is in marriage and family therapy. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I've been practicing for 15 years now in that space. My specialty lies in couples and families. And probably 2018, 2019 ish, started to notice patterns of money showing up in a way that I had a difficult time being able to navigate. And so, what do you do when you don't know how to do something? You go to Google. And so, I typed into Google interventions for couples who struggle with money, and financial therapy showed up. So did Dr. Christy Archuleta. Her name showed up. And my husband and I actually called her. I know I saw Christy on this call earlier, had a conversation with her trying to understand more about it. And, from then there, I was hooked on financial therapy, utilizing it. And, again, kind of fast forward, was introduced to Meg several years ago at K-State as my professor. And we just kind of became friends since. So I no longer practice clinically within my own practice. So that's a common question I get. Really, the work that I do now is fully all in the financial services advisory space. So I no longer practice working with couples and families from a clinical standpoint. I now work with them with inside of advisory firms. Apart from that, I'm a mom. I've got 2 kids. I love dancing. I love coffee. I wear socks and wool socks when it is insanely warm outside. Meg knows this. She makes fun of me for it. I'm always cold, even though I live in Georgia, and it is exceptionally hot here there. So I'm going to turn things over to Meg. That's a little bit just about me. Meg, why don't you introduce yourself, share with everyone a little bit about you?
I will. So my name is Megan Lurtz. I have been a part of financial planning, actually longer than I've been a part of financial therapy. My origin story, if you will, is I was working for a financial firm, a technology firm that rebalanced portfolios, and I'd get on the phone with these advisors, and we'd be talking about why they have to rebalance the portfolio. And sometimes it had to do with the market and making some fun tax advantages. And then other times it was like, well, Billy crashed the car, or Susan needs to go back to rehab, or, whatever. And now we need to take this money out of the portfolio, so we might as well do it tax advantagely. And I was talking to these people about families. And so flash forward, now I'm at a TD Ameritrade conference, and all these Texas Tech students walk up to me and they want to use the software at Texas Tech as a part of their financial planning program. And so I got to talking with one of their professors. His name's Dr. Barry Mulholland. He's no longer at Tech. In fact, he just traded schools, and I'm not quite sure where he's at now. But I was talking to him, and he goes, well, if you like this family stuff, kind of mixed with the money stuff, there's a place for that. It's called K-State. And I was like, sweet. So he set me up with Dr. Christy Archuleta and Dr. Sonia Luter. I had a couple conversations with them. I started in on the master's. 2 classes in, I decided this is where I'm supposed to be. And I went on ahead and pursued my PhD in personal financial planning. But I spend a lot of my time in financial psychology and the psychology of financial planning. Lots of nerd cred in the sense that all of your textbooks, if you've ever had to buy the textbook for financial psychology or the psychology of financial planning from the CFP, I authored some of those textbooks. If you are outside of the US and you've worked on that financial psychology textbook, that one I helped to edit and was working with Christy Archuleta on that textbook, along with a couple of other authors from all over the world. We so that stuff. And then I have always worked with advisors, in conjunction with advisors, whether it was at the Kids' platform. I still work at Shaping Wealth, where we provide lots of wonderful educational programs for financial advisors. I write a lot on different platforms, and I teach at Maryland, I teach at Columbia, I teach at Kansas State. And here, I think next year I'll be teaching at Rutgers. So I love financial planning. I love financial psychology, and the opportunity to partner with Ashley is just super exciting to work so closely with firms on their individual projects. Instead of just being like, I'm going to teach this class, or I'm going to provide, this course through Shaping Wealth. Now I really get to get my hands dirty with some of the different and really individualized projects that you guys come up with, which is super exciting.
It is super exciting, and I can't think of a better person to partner with in getting their hands messy and doing all the things. So let's talk about what a fractional chief behavioral officer is. It's a term that maybe some of you have and or are familiar with. It's definitely out there and starting to become more prevalent, I would say. And so from a fractional standpoint, I think we all probably know what that fractional word, right, kind of means, meaning that we're not your full time employees. So there's a benefit there. It's a partnership, it's a relationship there where we integrate financial psychology into the operations, communications, and overall client experience. If we want to get a little bit more into the nitty gritty of like, okay, so like, what does that really actually like mean? If we break that down, Meg and I support firms in 3 different ways: at the client level, at the advisor level, and also at the firm level. So, when we talk about supporting you and your firm at the client level, here are just kind of some ways in which that might look like. Meg kind of mentioned, around projects, and some of the work that we're doing with firms now is really creating customized projects. I have a firm that, we work for and creating a client journey, if you will, where it is a, several meeting kind of structured journey that is client facing. And, there are different tools and supports that go into that client journey, but creating something that is customized for that firm that is aligned with their mission, their values, their framework, but also integrates psychology, it integrates, financial therapy concepts, and just overall greater well-being on the client end. When it comes to meeting with clients, that is a lot of the work, that I do and love truly. I know that oftentimes when it comes to navigating difficult conversations or emotionally charged situations, whether it's life transitions or family dynamics, what have you, generally, most advisors don't love those conversations. And here is what makes me either unique or weird. You can choose. I love those conversations. I love sitting in the trenches with you or you and your clients or just your clients and navigating all of that stuff. That is my what I call zone of genius. There, it's what I get excited about, and really what I feel very called to doing is helping clients and helping advisors support their clients in that way. Most recently, I had a meeting where I got called in for a family. We'll say G1, the first generation one, mother, single mom, is having a difficult time with her adult son, and the adult son still lives at home. Her two other children have launched successfully out of the house, and the middle child, not to get stereotypical middle child, syndrome here, but the middle child was having a hard time launching. And so the advisor and the mom in this case just were kind of at their wits' end, not knowing really what to do. And so I got called into this meeting and we had a really nice conversation, and not much of it was actually about the numbers. And what we found with this adult son, just through asking, is that this adult son actually struggles with ADHD. And it has progressively gotten worse in the last several years for reasons that I won't go into, but he's had a difficult time. And so, through that conversation, helping not only the advisor, but mostly the mom understand, hey, here's a little bit how ADHD can show up, and here's how it can impact their ability to go out and get a job, their financial decision making. And here are some resources for you where you can feel supported, but also, if your son is willing, he can also look to for support there. That is one of just many, many examples of conversations that I've had the privilege and honor to really step into and help and support there. Meg, I know that you've worked a little bit kind of on the client side too. Is there anything that you would add and or highlight when it comes to this role of a fractional CBO and how we can support firms?
Yeah, I think even in just the way that you were talking about, you're as the expert in the room, it just creates a different dynamic. And both Ashley and I have also had situations in where working with the firm, kind of what they want to do, but it crosses over into this client support examples where we do a presentation. It might be on financial psychology, it might be on multi-generational wealth, and how G1 and G2 work together. So we might actually be talking to your clients, many of them at sort of maybe like a client event, instead of having someone from Dimensional, and Dimensional is wonderful, but Dimensional come and, talking about investments and all this kind of thing, to have Ashley or myself come and we're talking about some of these other maybe emotional or psychological or different considerations that matter. And they are right in front of your clients being able to answer questions in the same way that, the investment people do or the estate people do. But now it's offering out this other way to think about relationships. And there was one talk like that I gave not all that long ago. And the advisor got a call, a couple days later to talk about something that they had sort of been talking with this client about a few times. And the client really wasn't able to move. It had to do with whether or not that they were going to get rid of the family house, which is a huge, emotional decision and sort of what they wanted to do. And so after listening to my talk, they said to the advisor, I didn't know that I could think about it that way. And it didn't mean that the advisor hadn't tried to go down that path, but sometimes just hearing somebody like myself or hearing somebody like Ashley, and we're sort of talking about this and the different ways that people make decisions and the different things that go into that. And even though you are here at a financial planning office, these things also still matter. It unlocked something for that client and they were more able to move forward. So there are presentations, there's one-on-one work where it just sounds different coming from a chief behavioral officer than it might sound coming from their advisor.
So when we talk about advisor support, this is something that I know both Meg and I love, which is working directly with advisors. And maybe that's through coaching, conversation practice. I know I do a lot of that, what I kind of refer to as case consultation. So, hey, tell me about the client struggles that you're having and how can, collaboratively, right? We talk through that in a way that when you go into this meeting or when you need to send that follow up, you feel confident in how to approach the situation from a language standpoint, from all the things. So one-on-one coaching, debriefing, I think is a fantastic way and or skill set for advisors to be gaining. Obviously, Meg and I are very biased, there, but also supporting in ways or in terms of using tools. So I had a firm who was using an RTQ, a risk tolerance questionnaire, which is very common. And in looking at how they were using it, what we found was that they weren't doing any kind of follow up after administering the RTQ. Like they would administer it and then they would have their investment meeting, right? But they weren't drawing in and like using any of the information from that and tying it back into how the client can understand investments. And so, working with that firm, like we crafted really kind of an agenda like that takes the information from that RTQ and hey, here is how you can take that information and ask questions, follow up questions to clarify what they mean. And some of the things that they found is that the ways in which the clients were answering the questions, and you probably have had this before, where if it's like, "Hey, to what scale do you agree, disagree, like strongly agree?" And if you're like me, or if your clients are like me, like I kind of struggle with that because I'm like, well, in this situation, like I kind of strongly agree, but then I can think of about 10 other scenarios where I'm a little bit more neutral. So what the heck do I put on here? And, that's very common and very natural. Having a clarifying conversation after any kind of tool integration can really help open up the conversation. It can help create just greater rapport, greater intimacy there. And it can also help you when it comes to planning and, generating, advice beyond that. So, helping advisors, coaching them on just using tools, even on meetings, meeting design. I know Meg is fantastic at that. If any of you follow her work, you know that she is like, I'm gonna say this on here, and Meg's gonna roll her eyes. She is like the Brene Brown of like meeting design and messaging. And yeah, we all know that is true. Meg, how do you enjoy working with advisors, supporting them? How do you see this role supporting on the advisor level?
Yeah. A few things. So everything that you said, I also love thinking about the tools. I do very much love thinking about meetings. And there's sort of like two ways I think to think about that. You know, they're all of you, all of it, all advisors are different. Some of them follow a pretty traditional financial planning process and like, hey, we're going to have an intro meeting, and then we're going to have a discovery meeting, and then we're going to do this kind of meeting. And we can help make those perhaps more behaviorally informed. You don't have to do something different, but if you were to come to Ashley and I and say, "Hey, uh, I'm open, to different meetings or thinking about this structure. I'm not sure that that structure is really what even fits my firm, and that I want to be behaviorally forward. And what else would there be?" And so Ashley and I actually have done a lot of thinking lately about, I don't know that we're necessarily gonna call it this. Like we thought about what it is, but not necessarily what to call it. But that the for Ashley's like, what are you gonna say? The expectations. Like it is weird. It is super weird to think as an adult one day on a Tuesday, oh, my taxes are driving me crazy. I guess I should call a total stranger and talk to them about all the things in my life, let alone all this financial stuff. And then somehow I'm supposed to continue to work with this person for a long time. But, I don't even talk to my spouse about money. So the fact that I'm just going to like magically know how to talk to this professional about money, that sounds probably like not something I totally know how to do. But very few financial clients would say something like that, except for recently, I did talk to an advisor who had taken a class with me and said, Dr. Lurtz, that's like the thing that I learned. I was sitting in front of this advisor or sitting in front of this client, and they said to me, so like, what does it mean to like work with you? And he said, I actually had, the language to say, are you asking about the expectations of our relationship? Like, when would you call me and when would you not? And this prospective client was like, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. And so that in and of itself, so there is a process of meetings, a set of meetings that Ashley and I are thinking about that we want to help advisors to have more of, that we think makes sense for what financial planning is evolving into. And then so there's that, the cool meeting stuff, cool tool stuff. And then I will say that being an advisor is like super hard. And there isn't oftentimes a lot of people that you guys get to talk to. And so even though it may sound kind of like woo-woo to say, Ashley and I really like talking to you. We really like hearing about your firm. We really like what's going on with your clients. And the questions that you have, like, but just to have somebody to talk to is huge. I tell my students every semester, they always think, oh yeah, cool. Maybe they don't think that. Maybe they think, oh great, another one of these. But either way, they're in class and I'm like, believe me, you are going to learn far more from each other. You are going to come out of this, cohort process, with lifelong friendships. And it's because they spend somewhere between, 2 years together, or 16 weeks, 16 months together, depending on what program I'm teaching in. And that has real benefit. And so whether it's us bringing our advisors together at Beyond the Plan and just creating some camaraderie in the same way that you create camaraderie for your clients, or just an opportunity to talk to somebody who really wants to talk to you, I think has immense emotional value that I don't want to overlook.
The last thing that I'll add on there is when it comes to advisor support, one of the things, and this is woo woo, and also that it is, but it does happen. And one of the things I love talking to advisors about are how their own biases may be showing up with their clients. I had
Totally
I
happens.
had an advisor who we were on a call and they were struggling with, this is a female advisor. They were struggling with an older male client, and that relationship just felt just kind of, the advisor didn't feel like she could be herself. She felt like she kind of had to hold back due to the generational difference, but also some, just kind of cultural lifestyle, like just some differences there. And so, being able to talk with them about how not showing up and holding back was actually, hindering the planning process. We were able to talk through just kind of why that was. And, it was not a therapy session by any means, but it was a constructive conversation to where the advisor left going, I'm being kind of silly. Oh, okay. The thing that maybe I'm worried about, my biggest fear, actually, well, okay, like if that happens, then I know what to do about it. And so the advisor was able to go back into a meeting later, a month or so later, and have a really fantastic conversation and show up as themselves. And it made a difference because 2 months after that, the client then emailed her and said, hey, I did that thing that I know you've been saying to me for a long time now, but I just wanted to let you know that I did that thing that we've been working on. And thank you. Moving
Cool.
on to firm support. Um, you
Yeah.
know, I'm gonna let Meg, I'm gonna turn this over to her because I feel like, I mentioned kind of zones of genius here. And while Meg and I do a little bit kind of in each area, I do feel like this is kind of Meg's like zone of genius when it comes to firm support.
Yeah, so it's probably helpful. I didn't mention this. A lot of people don't know this. They assume that I am like Ashley, and they assume that I'm a marriage and family therapist or a psychologist. I am not. My background is in industrial organizational psychology. And if you don't know what that is, it means that I study teams. I study dynamics. I make a joke that I'm like a professional voyeur, like where Ashley likes to be in it, I mostly just like to watch. And I'm happy to be in it. I've spent a lot of time getting training in that area as well, but my zone of genius is more in this space of like, okay, this is what's going on and this is what's going on and here's what I know about this person and here's what I know about this person and how can I help craft that team? How can I help think about, what these relationships are and what we're trying to do? Like that to me it all just feels like one big people puzzle and I think that that is so interesting. And so working on like we work with a firm right now that we're working internally on just kind of getting some things organized, getting some things operationalized. There we go. And once those things are operationalized, the whole point of that is to then say, okay, this is what I want to hire someone to do. And so then working with that person, working with this particular firm to think about then what do they really want in their job description? Because it's not just like, oh yeah, I just want to hire another advisor. No, there's more to it than that. And so just making sure then that we have the firm in the right place and then also can think constructively about what's the type of person that we want to hire and helping to put that job description together. What, believe it or not, I enjoy writing job descriptions. Um, just internal communication. So Ashley and I have talked about we work with advisors and we work with clients of advisors. That, takes a little bit of work. The day one, a lot of advisors are like, you can't talk to my clients, or you can't talk to my clients like me, or I can't imagine that you would know what to do in this situation. Hey, so it takes a little bit of time to get used to us, and we are open to that. And so the best way then, if this is like C-suite, trying to make some decisions about how we're going to internally communicate with each other, with the fact that we now have a chief behavioral officer, and what is that going to look like? Um, I have done, thankfully, at different points in my life, it's always been super interesting to work on succession and M&A, and that has become more and more popular with PE getting involved and things like that. So this is not that I magically know how to do all of this, but I really do like to think through that in terms of like, how do we help put people together? And then just the internal messaging of all of it. This is something that I've worked on for years in different consulting projects with lots of different firms. Just how do you talk about it? Ashley and I joked, both of us made a comment about, oh, that seems kind of like woo woo. I'm not quite sure, like how do I tell my clients, let alone how do I tell my advisors what this means, and the types of things that you do. And this is honestly different for each firm. We may do relatively similar things, but the way that clients want to talk about us, clients being the advisors, the way that they want to approach that, looks different at each firm. And so the opportunity to help think through that language and like what we've seen successful at other firms, that has been great. And then, thinking about success at your firm and what that would look like. I enjoy those things as well. Ash?
Yeah, I think you said it all there. I don't have anything to add. Nailed it.
There you go. Teamwork makes the dream work.
You got it. All right. So, what is kind of the process? Meg and I have shared really three different buckets or areas that we work with firms on the client support level, the advisor support level, and then at the firm support. But what is kind of the process for getting started? How does it kind of initially work? And I'm really glad that you asked that in your head there and maybe in the chat that I can't see right now. When it comes to just kind of our process for, hey, just getting started here, it looks like really this. There's four different kind of basic high level steps here. You book a consultation call with us. Meg and I both join that call. We learn about you, we learn about your firm, we learn about what are the needs. Sometimes this might be a few different calls. It may not just be one, it could be a few different ones. And that's okay. And it's okay because it's a relationship that we're looking to build and to foster here. And sometimes you don't get all of the relational needs out of just one 45-minute call. So, you know, call, but it could be a series of a few different consultation calls where we talk about what is it like at your firm? What are you looking for? Here's how Meg and I can help and support. Here's what we're thinking. What are you thinking? And at the point in time which you say, hey, I'm feeling pretty good. You two are really cool. And I think I would like to move forward with putting something together to see what that could look like. Meg and I send a proposal, contracts are signed, payments are made, right? You guys know how that works. Sometimes there is some back and forth around the proposal piece. And we know that that is okay. It might be a few different conversations as well about the proposal. But once that gets signed and once we kind of get up and rolling, all of the I'll say housekeeping stuff, right, is kind of done and taken care of. Then we have our own expectation and planning meeting. And this is where we take that proposal, we dive in and we start mapping out how can we get to work and how can we find some quick wins and start to gain traction on these things that you're trying to do. And from there, really like I didn't want to put like that's where like the magic happens because that sounded kind of weird. But really like from there, we're off to the races as far as creating, refining, and implementing, if there's anything from a process standpoint that you want to just add, just to give some clarity as to maybe how it looks like, at least initially, maybe to get started in working with us.
Um, no, that pretty much covers it. I think I think maybe I'll say this that we do have a process. It's not totally willy-nilly. And you could be like, well, I want you to do all these things. Well, there might be like, seven that we can agree to or something like that. So it is a back and forth process. And we do try to be, because in some ways I, dislike the term soft skills, but there is an aspect of this that's like, okay, well, we're going to talk about this meeting, we do our best, to draw that up in a way that it's not quite a project per se, but it could be an individual project. But just to put some guardrails around that so that you have expectations of what's going to happen, we have expectations of what's going to happen, and everybody can kind of bring their best selves to that meeting or those meetings.
I would add just, I guess, maybe to that in being mindful of time and kind of wrapping us up is, Meg and I are really enjoying the work that we have already been doing together.
It's
Uh,
awesome.
it's awesome. It's fun. And again, I know that might sound really weird. Maybe you feel that way about financial planning, but from the moment that I wake up until I go to bed, and sometimes also in my dreams, like I think about this stuff and I enjoy it. I get excited about it. I want to talk about it. Sometimes at nauseum, which is unfortunate for my husband, truly. But now I have Meg, so Meg can take some of that load off of Clayton.
Sure.
But the work is really exciting. It allows both Meg and I, we feel strongly about being able to have creative outlets where we can have fun, but we can also do meaningful work there. And we are scaling internally to, be able to work with larger groups and broadening just the number of firms, which is also really, truly exciting. I would love to see this work take off, as does Meg. And in order to do that, like we also know that we have to also build a team and scale internally as well, which has also been exciting to be able to start laying kind of a roadmap there for that. Meg, do you also want to talk about how exciting it is to work with me and do this work?
Yes, working with
Please
Ashley
validate me.
is great, and I immensely enjoy it. It's just so fun to work with somebody who and this goes for advisors too. Like again, we think sometimes, or it's probably you believe in your head, or clients think when they go to work with a financial advisor, like why would anybody want to be a financial advisor? Like talking about money is like the worst. And there's plenty of financial advisors out there that think, "Ugh, talking about lots of emotions, that's the worst." And like but we enjoy it, and we really enjoy talking to financial advisors, and we enjoy each other. um and I don't know, just the amount of energy, the momentum that we have received from, we've only been, partnering together now for a couple of months, and it's been tremendous, like the number of people that have reached out, the people that have signed up. And so things are really getting going, and that feels extremely exciting. And I think a lot of it just has to do with the positive energy. And I know, again, that related to financial planning, that you guys have experienced that too. When you really lock in with a client and like, okay, I've got them and they understand me, and now we are off to the races, that's just the best feeling. And I feel like Ashley and I often experience that. We are constantly texting each other and coming up with, different ideas, and it's just been really, really nice. And so I look forward to more of that. And hopefully some of you on this call will decide that you want to get in on some of this fun action. And yeah, we'll be able to move forward together.
So, if you are sitting here thinking and wondering, gosh, I would really like more Meg and Ashley in my life, there are a few different ways you can have more of us in your life apart from working and partnering with us. Um, I'll speak first just about Planning and Beyond, which is the podcast that I run, and Meg has been a guest on there, as well as a lot of our friends in the industry, I will say. And Planning and Beyond is really about talking all about financial psychology, financial therapy concepts, ideas, frameworks, but delivering it, with intentions of practical skills, things that you can take into your next client meeting and really be able to use. There's nothing worse than going to a CE event or, reading about a cool like framework or theory and then thinking, okay, but how the heck do I actually like do this? Like, what does that look like? And so, I really feel very strongly, at least with the podcast, is making sure that the audience leaves and has some kind of practical skill or framework thing that they can take and do in their next meeting. So you can have more of me through that podcast where Meg is a guest. And actually, we recorded an episode, and that will release actually this Thursday there, which we're excited about. And then you can have more of Meg through Less Lonely Money, which I'll let her share a little bit more about that.
So Less Lonely Money is a Substack, and it's my Substack. I mentioned that I've been writing for years. I write textbooks. I've written just shy of 100 articles for the Kitsis platform, the only person to write more than me is Michael himself. And that feels pretty crazy to say out loud sometimes. And so, along about a year ago, I thought to myself, I write all these other places. I think I would really like to write for myself. So, I had there was this weird feeling. This happened to me like during COVID. I think many of us maybe read about some of that, people were dying of loneliness, just like the sheer isolation of being apart. And just the way that even our world, is going with, spending so much. I was reading some research the other day that was talking about the difference between like texting your mom versus getting on the phone with your mom, and at like a neurochemical level, hearing your mom's voice over just texting with your mom had a true impact on like your well-being. And so things like that, like, so it brings together philosophy, it brings together psychology, it brings together relationship, it brings together money, it brings together meaning, all these things that I've studied, thought about, wrote about in some way, shape, or form, coming together in a way that is just me. I write about myself. I share a lot of stories about my family and my experiences, but it's meant to talk about financial psychology in a way that hopefully feels more approachable. And it is entirely free. Comes out once a month. It is long. It is long. They're usually like
Not
4,000.
long enough.
It's just once a month.
Not long enough.
You're not subscribed. Uh, Easy to subscribe to that Substack. It's pretty easy to find. And then if you really like, oh, this is fantastic, and you're a financial advisor, there is a paid version. It's $149 for the year. And with that, every post, every hero post, I think is like the technical word for it. Every big post, there's a secondary post that comes out that's just for paid subscribers that has essentially what would be a client-facing newsletter. Like you can copy and paste the words that I wrote that are meant to be sent there, that are meant to be in front of financial planning clients. But it's talking about the exact same stuff that I wrote about that month. And with that also has like a little mini meeting guide. So if they were to call and say, hey, Bob, I saw that thing that you sent me and it made me think about, maybe I should talk to you about this. And you think, oh, okay. It gives you a couple of questions because I really like writing about questions and thinking about how we use questions in our communication and relationships with people. It gives you a little mini meeting guide of like what to actually then maybe talk to that person about, which you can also repurpose if you're just having a new monitoring meeting, instead of talking about the same song and dance, if you want to spice it up a little bit. Um, you can use the meeting guide for that. So it can be a nice little helpful tool, and hopefully more tools on the paid side to come. Hopefully that will come from some of the work that Ashley and I, or I'm sure will come from some of the work that Ashley and I collaborate on, and just making more of that available.